Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Divya and Kate, for joining us to talk about innovation at the speed of consumer demand. As mentioned, we have Kate, Global Media Director for Lenovo, and Divya, VP of Fan Engagement at FanCapital. So getting right into it, Kate, Lenovo has invested in sports marketing efforts over the past 5 years, including events like Formula One. What is it about partnering in sports that aligns so perfectly with the Lenovo brand and your customers' passions?
So first of all of our sports marketing partners are also our customers, and they're not just buying laptops for their employees. We get together with them, we try to understand their biggest challenges and opportunities, and then we develop technology solutions that cut across the whole portfolio. So for every one of these partnerships, we're providing devices, infrastructure, services, solutions. So these turn out to be the most robust and exciting customer success stories that we have to share. So there's real substance behind it. It's not just a matter of putting up the F1 logo next to the Lenovo logo, although I think they look pretty good together. So this is the first. I'm in a global role, so I don't have visibility to all the things we do in sports marketing at the local level or the geo level. But the history down deep in the markets is long. And the first sports marketing effort that came to my attention was when we rotated in a customer success story featuring Inter Milan FC a few years ago. We rotated it into a global media campaign that had a lot of other more traditional B2B creative in it that focused on our solutions and our products. And we put it through testing in all of our key markets around the world. And the result was that the Inter Milan FC execution got much better recall, which didn't surprise me. I mean, it was something different, something novel, and so people noticed it. But what was surprising is that it reeled them in, and that the responses to questions about our specific offerings were much better than responses to the creative that actually featured those offerings much more prominently. So it pulled people in, it held their attention. And it wasn't just in Milan, it wasn't just in Italy, but it was in countries that were as far-flung as Brazil or Japan, where Inter Milan FC probably doesn't have much of a fan base. And so how much more could we do if we had a sports marketing partnership with an organization or a team that had fans all around the world? And so here we are today doing that with F1. And 3 years into that partnership, we've just renewed and plussed it up because it's been so successful for us.
Amazing, thank you. Kind of taking it a bit further, how does sport align with the goal of reinforcing key brand messages like pushing the boundaries of innovation and performance, and extend it into how does Formula One ultimately contribute to your marketing and business goals?
So I think that Formula One, if you look across all the sports available that you could consider being partners with, I think Formula One is really the epitome of technology and innovation in sports. It also comes with associations like it's premium, it's fast, it's technical, it's elite. And so that's something that's really appealing to the people we're trying to engage through the sport, which tend to be IT decision makers, C-suite business decision makers at very large enterprises. Now, we have just announced another global sports marketing partnership, which I'm even more excited about. Maybe I shouldn't say it in this context, but we now have a partnership with FIFA. So we're the official technology partner for the FIFA 2026 World Cup. Oh, thanks. That was such exciting news in my household. My boys think I'm way cooler now. So also the Women's World Cup in 2027. And I think that the attributes that come with that sport are quite a bit different than F1. Our tagline is smarter technology for all. And you can go to any country in the world and you're going to find kids and adults playing soccer. And all it takes is a ball and a couple of twigs to mark your goals. So it's a good match with for all. But the technology association might not be as clear. And it wasn't to me. I mean, I started thinking about this years ago. When F1 was announced, I was like, oh, I wonder if soccer could be a partnership someday, because that's my passion. But then where does the technology come in? everywhere. I mean, from operations to the venue to fan engagement to the sport. There's technology inside of the soccer ball. There's technology that's detecting when the ball crosses the goal line, offsides, everything about it. So we're working with, there's not much I can share about that FIFA partnership today, but we're currently looking at 7 challenges and opportunities that they face that would incorporate technology to move that forward. And our teams together will pick and choose, but I think it's gonna span the portfolio. You're going to see much more technology by the time the FIFA World Cup comes in 2026, and we're gonna again have really great stories to tell, just like we do with F1.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Divya, so in a similar vein, can you tell us about the mission statement of enhancing the way athletes, sports teams, and fans engage with the world of sports? And how does innovation play a pivotal role in delivering that engagement?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, FanCapital is here to build fan engagement platforms for sports, leagues, teams, and recently we've also started delving into what it could look like for different industries. The music industry has fans, right? Cooking, even like chef industry now, they have all celebrity chefs, they all have fans. So where do you really find fandom? And then the second piece of this is fandom is now crossing over between just physical and now being physical and digital. And I think that actually came a while ago, but I think companies are just getting to it in terms of how do we give someone something that is 30,000 miles away where they can showcase their fandom as equally as someone who has come to a race. And we all say that, we know that for most sports teams in particular, or for most sports athletes even in particular, about 2%, even less, may actually touch the brand in a physical way, whether it's coming to a race, going to a game, meeting the athlete up close, it's even less. And so how do we bring that experience to somebody who is sitting in India in their room watching the F1 race from Vegas this weekend and saying, I want to be a fan of that team or that driver or that sport? So for us, we've broken it down into pillars of what we call fan identity. So fan identity is the identity I get as a fan for, I'll take Williams Racing, for example. When you sign on to Williams Racing, you get to customize your own driver card. So we get to pick a custom background, you get to pick a custom helmet, and those change throughout the year. So I have something that is that I carry digitally with me at all times that showcases how long I've been a fan, what kind of fan I am, what races I like, how I engage with the brand, and for me, that's my bragging of this. I've been a fan of Williams for this long, and I have done this many things with the team across 2.5 years. And then we take that and we bring it into the physical. So now if I take that and I go to the fan zone, where we are this week in front of New York, shameless plug, come visit, please. We have a bunch of areas where you can interact within the fan zone, and if you register and have your driver card, you get more out of the experience. You can get like a graffiti tote bag from one of our partners, Keeper Security. You have the ability to win meet and greets with the drivers at some of the fan zones we have as well. You get 15% off merch if you have a grid pass, 10% off merch if you have your driver card. So we've taken those two experiences and tried to combine them so that somebody sitting 30,000 miles away can feel just as close to the brand as somebody who's in the paddock this weekend with the physical individuals from the brand. And I don't know if we've 100% gotten there yet, but I would say that with all the digital products and features that we are pushing out on Williams, which will then also roll out to other FanCapital clients like Alex Albon, Franco Colapinto, Madison Skinner, we will get to a point where those individuals have a much closer connection and where we can test different products for different athletes depending on their market.
Thank you so much. I was surprised, honestly, when you said that less than 2% or about 2% of actual Formula One fans actually get to go to a race. I'm a huge Formula One fan for years now, and this is going to be my first race, so totally believe it. We were actually challenged by Google a few years ago to also target Manchester United fans in the UK because less than 1% of fans live in the UK. So we brought fans to the front row. We had them on a screen right in front of the match. So pretty cool. And that was in 2016. So you guys are taking it up a notch. So when it comes to F1, we know that F1 is not the same as other like sports in the sense that they don't have home venues or home field advantage. So what have you leveraged specifically in your experience at the NBA and NFL to apply to working with Williams Racing?
Yeah, so I think for us, going back to the less than 2% are going to touch the brand, in Formula One, it's almost even less. You don't have season ticket holders who are coming to every single race in every single market. And if you've ever been to Paddock or Paddock Club, I would say most of those VIP experiences are reserved for the upper echelon of individual that is there because of a partner invitation, a team invitation, or because they are friends and family of drivers, team principals, or other members of individuals in the paddock. What we realized on our end is we need to take that experience, and even when I was at the NFL and NBA, same thing. How do you produce content and experiences that people elsewhere are going to still connect with? And for us, it's how do we build out a direct-to-consumer platform? I think historically in F1, so many brands have focused on bringing in the partner dollars, which makes total sense. That's what makes a team run, right? If you're going to look at the percentage difference from what we have as a partner total on Williams versus our direct-to-consumer revenue, and you just look at the math, you're like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why would we ever do direct-to-consumer, period? But I think what we're getting into now is if we make and focus on experiences for the direct-to-consumer, we can get the individuals and the fans to grow that then we apply a value to, and then that actually we turn around and we go to a partner and say, your partnership is now more valuable because you know that with our platform and with innovating on our platform at Williams and FanCapital, we can triple your return in a sense. So I use Kraken Grid Pass as an example, and if any of you have been to prior Brand Innovators events, Kraken and we have talked several times together. But essentially what we have is the Grid Pass, where it is an NFT, but we've made it available to the masses, where somebody can go on Kraken's platform, claim Grid Pass, and they unlock a series of benefits and perks from Williams. So you get the Kraken Grid Pass, you have this NFT. We call it a digital collectible because people have been burned in the space by the words NFT before. So it's a free collectible. And with that, you get access to virtual meet and greets with the drivers. You get access to an extra 5% off merch at all times. You get access to special areas in the fan zones where you can see historical race suits and trophies. It's essentially like a museum, a mini museum that we bring with us. And other benefits. You get pre-sale access to our limited edition merch and collectibles. So for us, that's a very big way where we've taken something and we've gone to Kraken and said, look at this digital integration. We now have a quantifiable metric and result of a technological integration between a Williams account and a Kraken NFT account. We can see that when we did this integration, trading on your platform has increased, which is great for Kraken. Here's the amount of value we're driving. Here's what the partnership is now worth. And we can justify the incremental partner dollars by using direct-to-consumer products. So while, yes, the direct-to-consumer revenue on merch may be this much while our partner revenue is this much, one is still driving the other.
Really great insight. Thank you so much. I'm curious, how do you tie that into out of home in a way, right? So a lot of the things that you were talking about are things that us at Grand Visual we talk about all the time. How can we get fans or pedestrians to engage with brands on a digital screen, right? So how do you see out of home as an innovative channel and extending that ability to reach and engage fans?
Do you want to take this?
Sure. So I love out of home for its ability to reach people when other media cannot. So they're outside of their home, they're disconnected from their phone, from their laptop, and there's no other media that can reach them unless maybe they have their earbuds in. We do sometimes have trouble justifying it though, because it is a mass reach medium and we don't have mass reach budgets. And so we are always advising our markets to be extremely focused in their spends, to use the channels that help them to most precisely reach their target audiences. But out of home I think has incredible impact too. So we've addressed these challenges in two different ways. So over the past year or two, we've been using out of home as a retargeting medium, which I think it totally addresses the challenge, although the scale is limited. So we engage with people through a different medium first. We capture that mobile ID, and then we can retarget them as they're walking past a board in the city. So there's far less waste, much easier to justify, and the impact of out of home, in addition to videos they might see online or things they might see on social channels, it's incremental and it's an excellent impact. And we measure that through third-party brand lift studies, et cetera. The other thing is when we use out of home to reach larger groups of people, we make it count. We go really, really big. And so I think the Silverstone race was just mentioned before. For 1 week in advance of the UK Silverstone race, we use these 3D anamorphic mega-sized units to show the F1 and Lenovo partnership in Piccadilly Circus. We had units in Manchester, other places in London. Oh, we even greeted people who were presumably arriving in London for the race with units throughout Heathrow Airport. So when we do it, we make it huge and memorable. We also try to do some social amplification. We also sometimes let our entire employee base know about the opportunity so that we have 75,000 people throughout the world. If they think that what we did in Piccadilly Circus is cool, and it really was, then they'll pick it up and they'll be talking about it on LinkedIn. So that exposure is not just to people who are in Piccadilly Circus going shopping for the day, but it can be seen around the world.
Yeah, and we loved working with you guys on that anamorphic creative. I personally love the fact that you were open to doing it also on flat screens versus those large curved screens like Piccadilly lights, because anamorphic has, it's a technique, and a lot of people believe that it can only be done on large format digital screens, when in reality it could also be done on flat screens. So you guys were at the forefront of that for sure. Anything to add, Divya?
Yeah, I was going to say, on at home for us, we typically try and do it in an area that's already packed with conversation. I know that might sound counterintuitive, but if we're going to go spend the big bucks on the bigger placements, for us, it's how do we capitalize on the share of voice that's already happening? We live in a world for sports where it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, where I don't necessarily need to generate the conversation from zero. There's usually already conversation happening around Formula One races in town. And guess what? Formula One has done the legwork for me. They have a race, they have branding everywhere. So my challenge within that is, how do we take a share of voice pie and increase that share of voice over the already existing conversation that's happening? So I would argue that our fan zones are a great way of doing that. Similar to Kate with Lenovo over Piccadilly, what we did was we had our fan zone in Piccadilly Circus, and we actually had Kraken helped us pay for that Piccadilly under the lights, and we did a full takeover. So all the screens on top of the fan zone were all Kraken and Williams Racing for a rotation throughout the day, which then helps point to our physical activation and connects that shared voice. So if you walk into Piccadilly at any point in the day, any point at the time of the day, it just looks like a Kraken Williams Racing partnership. So for the individuals that are coming into that area, that's us capturing that share of voice when people are already talking about the race, already talking about F1, already talking about the drivers that are in the city. That conversation, we don't have a problem generating. What we have a problem with, and what the challenge is for us, which I think we address with the out-of-home placements and building those into partnerships that we already create, is another thing, is capturing and making sure that the share of voice that's out there is a significant portion Williams.
Thank you. So out-of-home and innovation kind of go hand in hand, we believe. The medium has completely evolved into a data-led and cutting-edge channel that pushes the envelope at the intersection of technique and innovation. At Grand Visual, we really take that and we like to craft bold and compelling out-of-home stories that connect consumers in the right mindset and at the right moment. And then we also like to say that the medium has this unique ability to seamlessly become a part of a city's DNA in a similar way that Formula One Grand Prix do when they come into different cities around the world. So I'd like to get your thoughts on how each is able to do so in such a successful way, in your own opinion.
Yeah, so I would argue, I'm trying to think through this one because it's very similar to kind of how I answered the last one. I'm going to mull it over, and if Kate wants to chime in on this one.
I would say we're using out-of-home more and more for events. So things like Tech World, our own internal annual event where all of the customers that are most important to us, prospective customers, are arriving. This year it was in Bellevue to hear all of the latest news and to mingle with people at Lenovo. Events like CES and IFA in Berlin. Those are places where we use out of home. You might say within the community, but I mean, I would say these people are coming from all over the world, and we want to talk to the journalists who are going to be reporting on everything that they're seeing, and our customers, prospective customers. And hey, it's not so bad if our own executives see it too. So we actually plan out of home along a route. I mean, we think about what their experience is going to be. For CES, we look at, is there any way to identify where concentrations of certain people will stay? Not really. People get to stay wherever they want. But we try to reach them from the moment they land in the airport, along the path to, in Berlin, it was, we had placements at Berlin Central Station, we had placements at the subway stop where not subway, S-Bahn, people would take the S-Bahn out to the convention each day. We had signage along that route, so it felt like we were totally immersed and part of the fabric of the community. But no, it was very strategic. It was along the path that the people we wanted to talk to were taking. Berlin, though, Berlin is known for great out-of-home opportunities, graffiti. We thought about if we had had longer lead time, that would have been a way for us to feel much more integrated, is by taking on opportunities that are really unique to Berlin. So with more time for planning next year, you might see that.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's very similar to the way that murals are being used in New York and LA, because it's already a part of that community. So I love that Lenovo's already thinking in that way. There's so much data to back the consumer's process, and Lenovo's already using that. And then through the use of grant visual services as well, there's ways to make sure that you're sharing the right message at the right time, so that it's completely a full circle when you're reaching that consumer. I don't know how much time we have left, but okay, cool. So, are there any questions from the audience?
How excited are you about Williams next year with Sans?
Yeah,
that's going to change the game.
Yeah, so
right?
if you've...
I love Williams, let me don't get me wrong. You guys, started this, right, during my very old generation, but you have Sans coming over, that's going to change the fan base, right, I'm sure, from a following perspective.
So, interestingly enough, I think we've already seen it, and I actually would take bittersweet. Logan's out of the seat. We now have Franco Colapinto. Franco's Argentinian, for those of you who don't know. The Argentinian fan base is crazy, and I say that with the most utter admiration for that fan base. But I think we've gotten a good sense of what bringing in another demographic can look like. Now, I think Franco's a unique case because they haven't had an Argentinian driver in 30 years, and the fans were raring and rabid and ready to go to have another Argentinian driver on the grid. But I would say in terms of Spanish drivers, you can see when we announced Carlos and when we announced Franco, we can see what the spike was in Argentinian traffic that's come to our platform, what the spike was of Spanish traffic that's come to our platform. So I think it's given us a really good roadmap working towards harnessing those Franco fans of how we go, and we're going to start the plan to harness Carlos fans. We've actually already started. A lot of the work that we've been doing is how do we translate and translation services for what I'm going to call a quintessentially British team were not necessarily a priority prior to this because we had a Thai British driver and we had an American driver. So most of the stuff was coming out in English. I'd get yelled at for spelling color without a U. The typical things, right? So now we've gotten to how do we put, and we've already started with paid ads and content that is specifically in both Latin Spanish to cover Franco's audience and also Spain Spanish to cover Carlos. And so it's an important distinction between both, but we've started putting out our experiences, articles, and content in both now so that we can measure how many people are coming back, how many people are registering for Williams accounts from those two demographics, and then what the opportunity is that we see moving forward within those two areas in those two countries. So to answer your question, I think Carlos is going to be a game changer. I actually think
Yeah.
2026 is going to be a bigger game changer because I wouldn't say all the
rules.
field is level set again, but at least there's a different set of requirements to be running after. So I think 2026 is going to be. Yeah.
Top 10, yeah. Okay.
I mean, I feel like if we have the car go correctly because they're building that 2026 already. I think all teams are at this point. I do think that Williams will be back within the top midfield at the very least, within that 2026 range.
And very exciting. Let's look good here, and then we can go here.
Adam Dove with Motorsport Network. Thanks for your insights. I'm curious, like, we're figuring this out too. Like, there's no other sport that seems to be really off the track, or the days leading up to the event are equally, if not like more important than, for some, the casual, and I'm curious, like, we're trying to figure out our fan engagement during the week, but we're doing some testing this week with a program that's going to be sort of an alternative broadcast for what's going on here. But I'm curious, like, what you guys do when it comes to race day. Like, how do you engage there, or do you engage differently, and how do you segment like your hardcore enthusiasts, maybe fans, versus your more casual cultural fans? And what does that look like?
I think for us, when we're looking at the swath of fans, we've broken out our fans into 5 categories, and let me see if I can remember them off the top of my head. We've got our Insta fans, which are younger, new wave. They really connect with socialization and they want to share things with their friends. And that's a priority market for us. Those like casual, we think they're on the periphery, we want to bring them in. And then we have a very traditional set of fans, which our traditional set of fans is the ones that have been with us from day one. We also have an avid, which are a little newer, but they still are engaging constantly. They're not necessarily looking for traditional race content, to your point, but they are engaging at a higher rate than anyone else, and that's why they're our avid set. I will get back to you with the other 2, but those are our 3 priority focuses right now.
Okay.
We just created clusters right now. So essentially what we're doing with those priority areas is we understand the Insta fans want to engage all the time, right? You put out a cool piece of content on Tuesday, they don't care if it's race day or not, they're going to engage with it, they're going to like it. What we've done then is we've crafted the digital products for them. So they have quizzes, they have other games, they have, for instance, like right now, maybe 20 minutes ago, our new podcast that we launched this year called Team Torque just ended, right? So we live stream that on our platforms, digitally, YouTube, everywhere, essentially. And so we program that content. And especially when you find a week like a fan zone, where a fan zone's a very casual draw as well, we end up seeing a higher traffic on sometimes Tuesdays and Wednesdays than we do on like an FP1. So that's always encouraging to us that we're not seeing these ebbs and flows, but our traffic is really staying relatively high throughout the entire week. And then we get to race weekend, not to speak of Formula One, we love Formula One, but we don't have access to a lot of those data feeds. A lot of those content rights are very difficult for teams to access. So for us, it was how do we take another data feed on the Williams channels and even on Alex Albon's. If you open Alex Albon's app this weekend, it'll be the same thing. And we do a programmed live race feed within those apps. So if you're an Alex fan and you go to Alex Albon's app during the weekend, there's a race feed and there's radio clips from him that are coming in. There's every kind of moment by moment action, like all the big moments. There's programmed content in there. So if he has a race reaction video, that goes in as well. So we're programming our own personal feeds for Williams and for Alex, where when you get to those places on race weekend, we're providing an alternative or a second screen experience for someone who's watching the race but may not be getting the Alex Albon coverage they so desire, or Williams coverage they so desire. And they don't have to go to Formula One and see every other driver on the grid. They can just come to Williams and see the content we've parsed out. And it's augmented with our virtual Williams garage, where they can go and check out the livery through an augmented reality lens. Like it's added into our Golden Knights content yesterday, where Alex and Franco went over to Golden Knights and shot some, I think they did slap shots on ice. Tried to keep it so they didn't get injured. They are not injured, by the way. So we all had to, oh, that's safe. But I think it's those types of things where you're getting uniquely Williams and Albon racing experience that you would not be able to get anywhere else that brings those people back during race weekends.
And I think last question.
I think the fan experience thing is a really interesting conversation. I think Williams is doing a really great job, you guys are, and by focusing so much on the fan experience, you have to understand really intentionally and deeply what the consumer wants, what the fan wants. What have you learned from your fan base that has helped Williams, or I guess Williams as a brand, take it to the next step?
So a lot of the things we've learned about our fan base have been, I would say, relatively new, right? For Williams, there's two sets of fans. There's the, albeit a little older gentleman who has been following since, 1977, right?
You're staring at me.
You made your reference. But then you have the newer individual who is, quite frankly, we look at Alex's platform and it's the majority young female. I think we were a little surprised by that. The other half of me sees the crowd that shows up in Singapore for his Q&A session and is not surprised by that whatsoever. Because it's all teen girls, essentially. Logan was worse. So if we're going through kind of that scenario, it's where are they engaging and what do they want? I think a prime example of that is the market was so burned by NFTs that when we launched Kraken Grid Pass, I'm not kidding, we had an hour-and-a-half conversation on whether to use the word NFT or digital collectible. Because would NFT be the thing that burned people and left a bad taste in their mouth? And we actually went digital collectible. And now oftentimes when someone comes to collect the Grid Pass or signs up for it, they don't know they're signing up for an NFT. They just know there's this free digital way of engaging with Williams that gets them access to unlock more of their fandom across time. So for us, it was that small learning about our audience that then helped us grow a full product. And we have over 100,000 downloads of that within a year. Within less than a year actually at that point. And then for us, going off that too, it tells us what experiences we want to program for what audiences. So going back to the race feed, we know that a lot of people interested in the race feed tend to be a little older than 24. They tend to want the nitty gritty of here are the tires used, here's the rear wing height, more race related content. And then we might, if we know that it's a day where most of the Insta fans are engaging or a time where that's going live, maybe we slot in Team Torque for that day, right? Because it's a more casual, fun, energetic type of piece where a lot of these young fans who've really glommed onto, honestly, Franco and Alex just shooting the shit, quite frankly, and talking about like Mate tea and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we section out our content and experiences.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all the wonderful insight.